The first time I saw the number, I thought it was a mistake. $10,000. Not 10, not 100. 10,000. Printed clearly at the bottom of the notice, bold and impossible to ignore, like whoever wrote it wanted to make sure it hit hard. I stood there in my driveway holding the paper, reading it again just to make sure I hadn't misunderstood something. HOA violation fine, $10,000. I actually laughed under my breath because there was only one problem with that. I wasn't even part of their HOA. I looked up from the paper and saw her standing near the sidewalk, watching me like she had been waiting for this exact moment. Arms crossed, posture straight, that same expression people get when they think they've already won before anything even starts. "You finally got it," she said. I folded the paper slowly, not taking my eyes off her. "Yeah," I replied calmly. "I got something. Not sure it's real, though." Her expression tightened slightly. "It's very real," she said. "You've ignored multiple violations, and this is the final penalty." I took a few steps closer, stopping just at the edge of my property line. "Violations of what?" I asked. She pointed behind me toward my house. "Unapproved exterior modifications, improper parking, and failure to comply with community standards." I glanced back at my house for a second, then back at her. Nothing had changed since the day I bought it. Same structure, same driveway, same setup. Everything was exactly as it had been listed when I signed the papers. "Let me make sure I understand," I said. "You're fining me for my own property, under rules I never agreed to?" She didn't hesitate. "You're within HOA jurisdiction," she said confidently. That was the moment I knew exactly what this was. Not confusion, not a misunderstanding. Control. "You might want to double-check that," I said. She shook her head immediately. "We already have. Your property falls within our enforcement zone." I almost smiled at that. "Enforcement zone?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "Anything within the community boundary is subject to HOA rules." I looked at her for a second, then unfolded the paper again and tapped the number. "So, you're telling me I owe you $10,000, I said, "for rules I never signed up for?" "Yes," she replied. No hesitation, no doubt, just certainty. That's what made it interesting. Because people who are wrong but confident usually don't realize how quickly things can flip. "I'm not paying this," I said simply. Her expression didn't change much, but her tone did. "Then it will escalate," she replied. "To what?" I asked. "Legal action," she said. "Liens, collections, possibly foreclosure proceedings." That made me pause for a second. Not because I was worried, but because she had just taken it too far. "You're talking about putting a lien on my house," I said slowly. "Yes," she replied, "if necessary." I nodded once like I was considering it. "And you're sure you can do that?" "Absolutely," she said. That confidence again. That certainty. I folded the paper one more time and slipped it into my pocket. "All right," I said. "Go ahead." She blinked. Just once, like she wasn't expecting that answer. "You're refusing to resolve this?" she asked. "I'm refusing to take it seriously," I replied. That hit harder than arguing ever could, because now she had a problem. If I wasn't reacting the way she expected, she couldn't control the situation. "You won't ignore this for long," she said. "We'll make sure of that." I nodded. "I'm counting on it." That seemed to irritate her more than anything else I had said so far. She turned without another word and walked back toward the HOA side of the street, already pulling out her phone like she was moving on to the next step. I watched her go, then turned back toward my house. For a normal situation, that would have been the end of it. But this wasn't normal, because later that same day, things escalated. Fast. I was inside going through some paperwork when I heard a knock on the door. Not aggressive, not loud, just firm enough to get attention. When I opened it, two men were standing there in business casual clothes, holding folders. "We're here regarding an outstanding HOA balance," one of them said. I stared at them for a second. "Already?" I asked. They exchanged a quick glance, like they weren't expecting that reaction either. "We've been asked to deliver a formal notice," the other one said. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "Let me guess," I said. $10,000? "Yes," the first one replied. I nodded slowly. "And who told you I'm part of that HOA?" They hesitated, just slightly. "According to our records," he started. "Your records are wrong," I said. That stopped him, because now the conversation had shifted, from demand to doubt. "Do you have documentation showing that?" he asked. I looked at both of them for a moment, then said something simple. Yeah, I said, I do. And that was the moment everything started to change, because what they thought was a routine collection was about to turn into a very different kind of problem. For all of them. The moment I told them I had documentation, both of them shifted slightly, not dramatically, but enough to show that this wasn't the standard situation they were used to. Most people either argue emotionally or try to negotiate when collectors show up. I did neither. I just stood there calmly, like I already knew how this was going to end. All right, one of them said, adjusting the folder in his hand. We'd be happy to review anything you have. I nodded once and opened the door. Give me a minute, I said, stepping inside. I didn't rush. There was no need to. Everything I needed was already organized, sitting in a folder exactly where I had left it after closing on the property. Purchase agreement, survey maps, legal description, and most importantly, the deed. When I walked back outside, they were standing in the same spot, but their posture had changed slightly. Less confident, more cautious. I handed over the documents without saying anything and watched as they started going through them page by page. At first it was routine, skimming, checking names, verifying addresses. Then it slowed down. One of them paused on the survey map, looking more closely at the boundary lines. The other leaned in slightly, reading over his shoulder. Neither of them spoke for a few seconds, and that silence said more than anything they could have said out loud. Is something wrong? I asked calmly. The first one glanced up briefly. Just reviewing, he said. I nodded. Take your time. They kept going, flipping to the deed itself. That's where it really changed. I could see it in the way his eyes moved more carefully across the page, like he was making sure he wasn't missing something. Then he stopped completely. He read the same line twice. Then handed it to the other guy. Look at this, he said quietly. The second one read it, and his expression shifted almost immediately. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough to confirm what I already knew. Because right there, in clear legal language, it stated exactly what I had been saying from the beginning. My property was not part of the HOA, not indirectly, not conditionally, not at all. There was no shared agreement, no overlap, no clause tying my land to their authority. It wasn't a gray area, it was black and white. They both looked up at me at the same time. This property isn't under the HOA, one of them said. I shrugged slightly. That's what I've been telling her. There was a brief pause as they processed that. Then the first one closed the folder slowly and handed it back to me. We're going to need to verify this with our office, he said. Go ahead, I replied. And with the HOA, he added. I almost smiled. Definitely do that. Because now the situation had flipped. Completely. What started as them coming to collect a $10,000 fine had turned into them questioning the validity of the entire claim. And if they were questioning it, it meant one thing. The HOA had a problem, a big one. They left shortly after, a lot less confident than when they arrived. No threats, no pressure, just quiet, professional distance. I watched them drive off, then went back inside, already knowing what was going to happen next. And right on time, it did. About an hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. This is the HOA office, a voice said. Calm, controlled, but with a slight edge underneath. We've been informed that you're disputing a violation. I'm not disputing it, I said. I'm rejecting it. There was a brief pause. Our records show your property within community boundaries. Your records are wrong, I replied. Another pause, longer this time. Sir, this is a serious matter, she said. Failure to comply can result in legal action. You already said that, I replied, and we're prepared to proceed if necessary. I leaned back slightly, holding the phone away for a second before bringing it back. Then proceed, I said. That wasn't the answer she expected, I could tell. Because people like that rely on pressure working, on people backing down, on fear doing the job for them. But none of that was happening here. Before we escalate further, she said, her tone tightening just a bit, we recommend you come into compliance. I recommend you read the deed, I replied. Silence. Real silence. Because now, they knew something was wrong. You mentioned documentation, she said carefully. I showed it, I replied. To the guys you sent. Another pause. All right, she said finally. We'll review everything and get back to you. Take your time, I said. Then I hung up. And just like that, the pressure stopped. No more calls that day, no more visits, no more threats, because now they weren't pushing anymore. They were checking, verifying. trying to figure out how something like this had gone so far without anyone catching it earlier. But the interesting part wasn't what they were doing. It was what she was doing. Because later that evening, I saw her again, standing across the street, watching. But this time, it was different. No confidence, no attitude, no sense of control, just tension, like she was waiting to see what would happen next. I stepped outside just far enough for her to notice. She didn't come over, didn't say anything. She just stood there. And for the first time since this started, she looked unsure. Because now, the situation wasn't in her hands anymore. It wasn't about what she claimed. It was about what could be proven. And once the truth came out, everything she had built this on was going to collapse. The next morning, everything changed. Not slowly, not gradually, all at once. I got a call just after 9 a.m., same HOA office number as before, but this time the tone was completely different. There was no edge, no pressure, no attempt to control the conversation. Just careful, measured words. "Sir, we've completed a review of your documentation." I leaned back in my chair, already knowing where this was going. "And?" I asked. There was a brief pause before she answered. "It appears your property is not part of the HOA. Not, might not be, not, we're unsure. It appears, clear, direct, final." "Yeah," I said calmly. "I know." Another pause, slightly longer this time, like she was choosing her next words very carefully. "The violation notice issued to you has been withdrawn." I almost smiled. "You don't say." "And any associated fines, including the $10,000 balance, are no longer valid." That was it. Just like that. $10,000. Gone. Not reduced, not negotiated, erased, because it never should have existed in the first place. "I'm glad we cleared that up," I said. "Yes," she replied quickly. "We apologize for the inconvenience." Inconvenience. That word did a lot of work for what had actually happened, but I let it go. There was no need to push right now. The situation had already flipped completely. Before hanging up, she added one more thing. "We are also reviewing how this error occurred internally." "I'd recommend that," I said. Then the call ended. And just like that, the pressure campaign was over. No more notices, no more threats, no more enforcement zone. Just silence. But it didn't end there. Because about an hour later, she showed up. Not confidently like before. Not walking onto my property like she owned it. She stopped at the edge this time, kept her distance. That alone told me everything I needed to know. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, and walked just close enough to meet her halfway. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she did something I hadn't seen once since this started. She hesitated. "They made a mistake," she said finally. I looked at her for a second. "They?" I asked. She didn't answer that directly. "The records were wrong." I nodded slowly. "Yeah," I said. "They were." There was another pause. Longer this time. Because now, she didn't have anything left to stand on. No authority, no backing, no leverage, just words. "You could have handled this differently," she said, trying to regain some ground. I almost laughed. "I did," I replied. "You didn't." That landed. Hard. Because now she had to face something she had been avoiding from the beginning. This wasn't a shared problem. This was her problem. "You ignored the notices," she said, "but it didn't have the same strength as before." "I ignored something that didn't apply to me," I replied. She looked down for a second, then back up. "We were trying to maintain standards." I shook my head slightly. "You were trying to control something that wasn't yours." Silence. Real silence. Because there was nothing left to argue. No angle to twist, no authority to lean on, just the truth. And the truth doesn't leave much room for negotiation. "I'll make sure this doesn't happen again," she said finally. I studied her for a moment, then nodded once. That would be a good start. She didn't say anything else after that, just turned and walked away. No dramatic exit, no last comment, just quiet. Because when someone loses that kind of control, there's nothing left to hold on to. A few days later, I heard through one of the neighbors that the HOA had held a meeting. Not a public one, internal, closed. The kind where decisions get made quickly and quietly. By the end of it, she wasn't in charge anymore. No announcement, no explanation, just replaced. Because even they understood what had happened. This wasn't a simple mistake. This was overreach. And if they didn't deal with it, it would come back on them. As for me, everything went back to normal. No more letters, no more visits, no more random claims about zones or standards. Just my property. Exactly the way it was supposed to be. Mine. Fully mine. And every now and then, I'd think back to that moment in my driveway, holding that $10,000 fine in my hand, wondering how something that ridiculous even happens. But looking back, it made sense. Because this was never about the money. It was about control. And the moment that control was challenged with something real, something legal, something undeniable, it collapsed instantly. All it took was one document. How did you like the story? Please comment and like, subscribe, and share my YouTube channel for more interesting HOA stories.